our stage is loud. When we do these festivals, you can't hear any vocals, you can't hear any guitars. You hear the drums, you might hear a little bit of something because none of these bands have gear on stage. Mm-hmm. We're on that show. You fucking hear us on stage. We're loud as shit because that's what I want to be in a rock and roll band.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Ben Goodman, and I'm here with my cohorts, Siobhán, Cronin.
Ben?
Cory.
Who's Ben? Aren't you Benny?
I don't know a Ben.
You just got 2020'd. We're with Kevin from Candlebox. This is such a great band. I'm riveted. And now for Cory.
Well, before you pass it off to Cory, Ben has used all of his words in the recording of these episodes. So if you haven't checked out part 1, go listen to it with Kevin Martin. This is part 2. We get a little bit more into some of his philosophies about music, a little bit more of an opinion episode, more about some of the writing process.
We may have suggested prior to taping part 1 that he grab a glass of whiskey. And generally that makes part 2, a very open and lively discussion. And that's no different in this case here.
So we really got to let loose in this one. We're not going to spoil any of the fun. This is part 2.
Fucking apologize ever.
It's rock and roll. Look it up. Part 2 with Kevin Martin. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back for part 2 with our incredible guest this week. Before I introduce him, I will introduce myself and my cohorts, though. I am Siobhán Cronin, here as always with Benny Goodman and Cory Peza. And back for part 2, the incredible Kevin Martin of Candlebox, clearly a scholar in the arena of music. We learned so much in part 1. You have to definitely go back, listen to it, like and subscribe, 2020-d.com. I can't believe that first episode went by so quickly. We are so excited to talk more. We barely got into even the meat and potatoes of everything. So welcome back for part 2. Thanks for being with us, putting up with us. Can't wait to dive in.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me back. And so Cronin, you're not related to Kevin Cronin.
I am not. I have my background's, Irish, Scottish. My mom's from Scotland, so I'm the first American of the family. But
right on.
Yeah.
Kevin Cronin.
Yeah.
Midwest.
Hey, wait. You're not related to Eric Martin from the lead singer Mr. Big, are you? Because that guy's voice is fucking so. Are you really?
No. but Cronin. Listen, Cronin is a very, very rare name, and it's a musical family, and I just thought I'd ask him. You're a musician, so.
It is surprising, because I don't think I've met any other Cronins, that I've heard of. So I don't know, maybe I should do one my ancestry.com and see if there's anyone I'm related to that I don't know about.
30%
milkman. You might be Kevin Cronin's great niece.
Yeah, maybe.
It's like, it's got to be 65 or something.
You're all that Hitler ever wanted.
Oh my God, Ben. We almost made it through an entire 2 episodes without an off-color joke.
Yeah,
okay.
It's bound to happen. But anyways, steering the conversation back a little bit. At the end of the last episode, we started just to briefly mention the newest Candlebox record, Wolves. And I spent the day today kind of just having a Spotify playlist going, listening, through the catalog, reacclimating myself. Obviously everyone knows the big songs that have had this incredible staying power for so long, and they're some of the most recognizable songs you've heard. So going through some of the newer stuff, it's incredible. And what I noticed, and it's one of my favorite things about Candlebox, is that every record, even though they have different sonic characteristics, a little bit of songwriting, it sounds like a band in a room playing, which is one of the most rare things to hear now on especially any radio rock or anything like that. But you can tell that that's a real band. There's a connection. It's not a pieced together quarantine jam sending tracks through the internet like we're familiar with.
Right. Recently. But like our band.
Exactly. Yeah, I should mention that we're in a band called Lost Symphony.
I'm disappointed it's not quantized. I'm disappointed. Yeah. I think it would be better if you quantized everything.
Yeah, we're in a band called Lost Symphony.
Remove the feel.
Who've been even before lockdown was a mandated thing. We've never been in the same room. We have members all around the world. We've played with people from Japan to Canada, America, everywhere.
Marty Friedman's in Japan.
Yeah, we've had a ton of great guest players like Marty and Nuno and all these people. So we're familiar with like the process of like, oh, I got some DI tracks from this studio and piecing together an album. But the Candlebox records have this like really cohesive, organic feel, you know, throughout the catalog. Can you talk a little bit about, you know, what gives you guys that vibe and how important that is to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I mentioned earlier. You know, I don't make records until I'm ready. I don't walk around with, you know, books and books and books of lyrics. So what I've always kind of fought for with the band is that we record live. We've done it since the demo tape, the red demo tape, the infamous red demo tape from 1992. Up until the Wolves record. It is a process that I think is very important to the creation of the art and the music that you're trying to, or the process and the story that you're trying to tell, if you will. And I think that only happens when you put yourself in an atmosphere, and maybe I'm speaking purely from myself, but if you put yourself in an atmosphere where you are forced to be creative, and your conversation revolves around the creation of that song that you're working on, it makes you in tune with one another musically. And I've always said, you know, to the guys in my band from my punk bands when I was, 12, 13 years old till Pete and Barty and Scott and I became a singer, is if you can't play my part and everybody else's part in the band, then you're not doing your part. You should be able to mentally be playing everybody else's part when you're performing or when you're writing or recording, because you have to be thinking about how everything else is going to be stacked and where your position is inside of that. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things I learned from, I think, the jazz background of my father, was that the reaction and the responsibility of a jazz musician, and the reaction rather than, I guess, reactionary is not always the best thing, but in music, it's very important, because if you don't react to the emotion or to the movement that's happening in that song, everybody's going to recognize it. But when you do react to it, it's magical. And I think that's why, again, why the Seattle music scene was so important and still so regarded and so influential, was because every one of those bands kind of had the same thing. I mean, they all played different instruments. Jeff Ament wasn't just a bass player. Chris Cornell wasn't just a singer. Kim Dale wasn't just a guitar player. Every one of those musicians had some other instrument in their life that helped them to become the musician they are. And when you sit in a room and you're writing a recording, if you're not all in that headspace to where I can hear my bass player and I hear what he's doing and I need to react this way to that, you're not being a good supportive player in that, So that's why our records kind of come across the way they do, is because we do record live. It's imperative to me that we record live. We go into studio with 6 of 12 songs. We don't go in with 12 songs. The only time we've ever done that was the debut album. And that was just because we'd been playing together, for like 6 months when we made the demo tape.
Yeah.
And then another 6 months before we got signed. And then we made the album, and we're like, okay, well, we should use You and Far Behind from the demos because we'll never be able to reproduce those. We tried re-recording them. It didn't work. So we took the You and Far Behind from the demo tapes, and each, by the way, those are both one take tracks. So that's how good we were as a band before we even made our debut album. We worked and worked and worked and worked very, very hard to become those musicians and those creative entities to one another, and supportive, actors or characters, if you will, to one another musically. So that's why every Candlebox record you have is so different. We're the most inconsistent rock and roll band, I think, from Seattle. And it's a terrible thing to say, but it's true. Like we never wanted to limit ourselves to our creativity.
Diverse. Don't diverse, eclectic. Give yourself a positive adjective on there.
Hang on, I was saying it was eclectic. But yeah. I mean,
it's great. And that's what made it so fun to like I said, spend some time today and go back and listen through, the different eras and the difference, and like there is definitely the different sonic quality and the different tones and everything, but there is a cohesiveness of that live band in a room that sounds like Candlebox is playing.
That's it. I think, a lot of people say, what's your favorite Candlebox record? They ask me all the time. I don't really have one, because every single record has something on it. Like Happy Pills to me is an odd record for us. There's 6 songs on there I absolutely love. And there are 5 songs on there that I don't even know why we bothered to record. Then we made Into the Sun. When we got back together in 2006, we made Into the Sun in 2008. And it's a magical record because we were so hungry to be working together again.
For Happy Pills, just before we move on from that, I read somewhere earlier, that album had a lot more influence from a production and label standpoint as far as the sound and everything. Is that why there's songs in there that you didn't connect with as much?
Yeah, I mean, the label was looking at the point at that time. I believe Train. That's what they're called, right? They had that song. Sweet Soul Sister, or whatever it was.
Oh yeah, Hey Soul Sister.
Hey Soul Sister.
Yeah, it was like 1997 or something.
Ukulele, bro.
So the label was like, you guys can move into this world because Train is like this pop band that's venturing into rock, but they're still doing pop. I was like, what are you fucking talking about? But so we had asked Roger Waters from Pink Floyd to produce the album. He said yes. Maverick said no, he's too old. Then we asked Jeff Lynne from ELO to produce a record.
Yeah.
Jeff's like, I would love to work with you. And we're like, Jeff Lynne is hands down one of the greatest songwriters ever in the history of rock and roll music. And the label said, no, it's not what we're looking for. And then we're like, we got this guy, I don't even remember his name. The guy produced our record. I hate him so much. He was an engineer on Physical Graffiti with Led Zeppelin. And so that's
Ron Nevison.
Yeah, so Ron Nevison, so was like, we got this guy Ron Nevison, we think he'd be great for you. Like, what the fuck? And then, of course, when we look back at what he had done, he had worked with kind of that new pop stuff that was happening. So Maverick was trying to get us to go into that world of becoming the next kind of Train for the label, which we're all like, there's no fucking way. But so Ron he tried to force us into that kind of pigeonhole. So that's why there's 5 songs on the record. I'm like, bullshit. Belmore Place, Offerings. I mean, I just am like, I want to fucking shoot myself for these songs. But then there's Stone's Throw Away, Sometimes, Happy Pills, It's All Right. I mean, Look What You've Done. Like those songs, I'm like, that's Candlebox to me. Because we wrote those in the studio. Like we're about to release a box set. You guys are going to be the first people to know about this, but nice. It's coming out, I think in 2023 with the 30th anniversary of the debut, but it's going to have all those B-sides, all the demos that we did on vinyl that I'm listening to now with, Pete, our guitar players, doing the executive producing on it. So he's going through all the tapes we have and remixing stuff and I'm like, God damn, I forgot about this song. I forgot about that song. 5 of the stuff that's going to be on this box set, these are songs that were not included on Happy Pills that are amazing songs because they got cut because it wasn't the vibe of what Maverick wanted. So yes, they were very instrumental in kind of directing that and controlling it. And of course, once we found out, we're like, this is bullshit. So
that's interesting that you bring that up because I think a lot of people that are getting into music don't realize that that's a thing until they encounter what it's like to work with labels and people that are trying to direct your career. What sort of advice would you give to people on staying their ground or staying committed to their vision when they're getting pressure from outside sources on what type of music they should be doing? Like, how do you stay on course in a situation like that?
Well, I think you have to be honest with yourself. I mean, first of all, if you're concerned about what somebody's telling you to do, then you're in the wrong business. I mean, if you're a musician, you're not supposed to listen to anybody but your heart. it will, 99.9% of the time, it will tell you where you're supposed to go and what you're supposed to do. And I think Happy Pills is the one time in our career as a band where we allowed that outside influence to kind of find its way in. And I don't think we were conscious of it until the record was done. And we realized that we didn't really love the album. We didn't love the mix. Ron Nevison was fired in the mix process, by our manager, John Reese, because he was fighting with us over shit. I mean, he was really trying to direct what Maverick wanted, which at the time we didn't know Maverick was telling him we didn't find out until years later that through our manager, John, that's what they were doing. So he was trying to turn us into Train for the label because he wanted more work from the label. And we fired him because of it. But yes, if you're not being honest with yourself and you're not making the music that you feel you should be making, if you're trying to sound like somebody else, first of all, don't.
Right.
We have enough of that. There's plenty of, if you listen to modern rock radio right now, it's the worst example of music there is out there. And that's the sad thing.
Can you indulge me in like a historical fiction? So like, let's say Roger Waters. If they're like, all right, we'll call him this Zionistic crazy fucking coot, because as he's gotten older, they revealed that like, oh yeah, that guy who made the wall, like first off, let's just start off by saying he's one of the greatest musicians, and Pink Floyd is just like maybe the awesomest band. I mean, I Queen for me, but like Pink Floyd is just so good in so many ways,
right,
and everything with Roger Waters was fucking awesome, and he's fucking awesome, and I fucking love him. But he seems like a very hateful, strange, old, curmudgeonly, cantankerous human being with a lot of very strange, I'm not sure I feel good about things to say. What do you think would have happened had you not done Happy Pills the way that you did? And they said, yeah, let's get the dude from Pink Floyd over with the Candlebox dudes. Like, what would that have been like, Kevin?
I think that the record would have been a lot more introspective. One of the things I love about Roger Waters, not only his solo stuff, but what he's done with Pink Floyd, but the stuff that he's produced as an artist. He is, he comes from that generation where his father was in, World War II. His grandfather was in World War I. He comes from a broken family. He's an artist from England. He's a brilliant songwriter. He would have certainly been all over me when it came to lyrics. He would have been all over the band when it came to their playing. I think that we would have made a record that was very introspective and very personal, and probably, I dare say, groundbreaking for a band of our caliber of musicianship. I mean, at the time when we did Happy Pills, we had Dave Cruzen from Pearl Jam 10 on drums, Pete Klett on guitar, Barty Martin was playing bass. At this point, I was playing guitar and not only writing all the lyrics and the melodies, but playing guitar as well. And we had a friend of ours, Robbie Allen, who was playing guitar. He was a great songwriter from a band called Rob Rule. So I think that we would have, in that process, made a record that would have probably been as good as maybe a Super Unknown or Alice in Chains' Dirt or maybe Dark Side of the Moon, Pink Floyd, because we were striving for that as a band. And the direction that the label was forcing us with Ron Nevison was not the direction we wanted to go. Now, Happy Pills, Sometimes, and A Stone's Throw Away, if you listen to those three songs, you can hear the depth of which we're writing as musicians. Those three songs are my favorite examples of where I felt the band was at our peak as musicians, as writers. The first album's a fluke. I mean, that was just, we got lucky with that record. We wrote Far Behind, we wrote You, we wrote Cover Me, I wrote Blossom. Barty, our bass player, brought Far Behind and You the first day he came to try out for the band, and we turned those into, the biggest hits we've had. But we weren't really great songwriters at that point. We didn't know ourselves. I certainly didn't know myself as a singer. I don't even sound like that anymore. I can't even sing Far Behind like that anymore. That was my first singing gig.
So wait a minute, hon. Before my brain loses it, if we had invited Roger Waters and you guys had done a record together in lieu of what had happened, you could have had your pudding and your meat.
Jesus Christ. I'm sorry. I apologize apologize for him. I've had to apologize for him in several episodes.
I know. I got
No,
used
that's
to
all I
that.
can think of when I hear Roger Waters. Is like, you can't have any pudding if you don't eat your meat.
Yeah,
and
but
that's
that's
like
not-
all I can. I'm just
That's
I'm
not
fucking
Roger
with you,
Waters.
but
That's the movie. You know, I mean, that's his whole concept.
no,
I mean, listen,
he
but first
says
of
it
all,
on the fucking
he's-
record.
Yes, but he's talking about what was going on in England at the time during World War
Oh,
I.
I
That
know
was
there's a deeper meaning
all
to
the
it, but
history
I was
to it.
just huffing.
And if you don't eat your meat, you can't have any pudding. How can you have any pudding if you don't eat your meat? So if we'd have worked with Roger Waters, I probably would have said, you can't have your whiskey unless you have a line of cocaine. If you don't have a line of cocaine, you can't have your whiskey.
yeah, so it's like it's like a feedback loop,
Yeah. I mean, you know,
a
that's what we would've gotten.
catch-22.
There's still time for the next Candlebox record.
Oh my gosh. Well, but this is speaking
Get
of songwriting.
wolves.
No, but
Why
going
would you
back,
get wolves? What's
All
wrong
right,
with
Ben,
that one?
We're done with you. Speaking of songwriting, you mentioned, how you developed kind of as a band, as songwriters over the course of your career and over several albums. Can you talk a little bit about the process for you, maybe individually and collectively as a band, writing your first album and how it's changed? Like, what is the songwriting process like for you?
It's it's super disjointed. We are not in any way, shape, or form prolific at all. We go into the studio with, like I said earlier, about 5 songs that are in strong structural working order, and then the rest is demos. I've gone in with vocal melodies and for my voice memos and said, hey, I have this thing. This is a guitar part, but I'm going, nah, 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 nah. And so the guitar player learns it. He goes, oh yeah, that's cool. Let's do that. So on Wolves, for example, the song Trip, which is basically about my love affair with my wife, and 20 years into our relationship, and I'm still as in love with her as I was day one. That song's about how she tripped me up when I met her, and I was 32 years old. I had been single for about a year. I got divorced a year earlier, and my first relationship didn't work out. And I was, kind of running around LA and just enjoying the fruits of my labor, if you will. And then this young 21-year-old Australian girl sits down next to me in a club, and we started talking about art and music. And I was just completely, destroyed. I mean, I was madly in love with her from the minute I met her, and I still am. So that song Trip on this record was this simple little Suspicious Minds guitar part. Really, it was just, that ding, 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 it's picking through. And I didn't have lyrics for the song, but it made me, the little dance that's happening with that guitar was just beating my brain into thinking about my wife. And I was like, I have to write this about Natalie. And so that's how it happens. It's if you were, like I've said it a million times, I think, is if you were allowing yourself to be lost in that moment, into the music that you're creating as an artist, you may not produce a lot. I mean, and then there's, brilliantly prolific artists like Billy Joe from Green Day and Ben Gibbard from Death Cab for Cutie, and, Jack White. And there's guys like that can just write
Frank
all the
Zappa.
time. Frank Zappa. I'm not that guy. But
I love Frank Zappa.
Everybody loves Frank Zappa. But when I do write, I am, at that point, it is every ounce of my being. And so we work really fast. We only do about 2 to 3 days of pre-production. We go directly into the studio, and the conversation is, because we're live, my microphone's live, everybody has a microphone, and we talk right before we're ready to track. This is what the emotion is. This is what my feelings are. I don't have the lyrics yet. I'm going to be singing the melodies that I have, and I need you to react off of them. And we know what we do now. I mean, we know that it's going to be either an 8-bar, verse, or maybe it's going to be a 4-bar intro, 8-bar verse, and then it's going to be a 8-bar, 4-bar pre, and then we're going to the chorus for 8 bars. I mean, we know what we do now. So it's easy for us to dive into it, but it's very important that everybody in that process, when we're doing that writing in the studio, what I mentioned earlier, when we go in there with the songs that are just a demo, is that everybody's in tune with it, and everybody's keyed into what the emotion is behind that song, and that's how we write, and that's how we work through it, and that's why Wolves is I think the best record we've done since the debut album, maybe even better than the debut album, because we're so. I mean, there's a point in day 2 when we were recording this record, we were only in the studio for 5 days, where I have a complete meltdown with the band. And I'm like, go home, record's done. We're not doing this. You guys you're nowhere near where we were 3 days ago when we started pre-production. I don't know what the fuck's going on, but let's just call it a day. And that happens because when one person comes in without that mentality of if we're here to work, produce, and create, it throws everything off when you're writing the way we are. Now, that doesn't count for everybody else because I don't know how everybody else writes. But when we're doing what we do, and Brian and Island and Adam and Dave have been with me now for, Adam's been with me for 20 years. Dave's been with me for 20 years, 20 plus years. Brian and Island, they know what I want. They know how I work. And, but when one of them comes in without something, it can pull that sweater thread and, all of a sudden
derail the whole thing.
I think Cory nailed it. Like, I love the whole band in a room thing. And now you have, this Get Back thing with the Beatles. And like, one of the things that I love about what you just made like me clear about was that like, you kind of write like how I've seen the Beatles to write, which is kind of why I love your band from day one. And is it interesting? Have you seen that documentary? And is it interesting now to vicariously look on someone like, going, Octopus is God, and then it's like totally George writing it through Ringo kind of thing? Like does that happen to you? Like, do you feel that watching that vicarious? Is it weird for you?
It was funny because my wife and I started it and she was like, oh my God, this is like you guys. Because we've been together so long and that's how we work. We will go and lock ourselves into a room knowing that it's time to produce something. And
I don't like Paul that much. He's an asshole.
And I'm not.
But he knows what he wants.
I was about to say that. I have been Paul so many times because, and he is an asshole on it. But the thing is that he's the one who's there producing these songs. They're talking over him playing Let It Be. They're talking him over writing Get Back. He's producing this shit, and these guys are like, oh man, I look like a cigarette. I don't know what you're doing. I don't like you. I had lunch the other day. It was delicious. And then John Lennon waltzes in whenever he fucking wants, and Paul's like, hey, I've already written 5 fucking songs. But that's the thing. I have been Paul, and that's what happened in the studio during Wolves. I was like, fuck this, and my bass player Adam's like, well, in defense of ourselves, like, in defense of yourselves. What the fuck are you talking about? There's no defense. You can't defend yourself right now. We just did 2 days worth of pre-production going through all this shit. And the fact that you're not sitting here with charts in front of you is bullshit. And I pay these guys. That's the difference. Like, I'm a business, right? So I'm paying them to be there with me. It's not like we're a band right now and they're included in everything. These are, I'm the last remaining member of Candlebox. So these guys are hired guns. Now, they've been with me a long, long time and I love them to death. But I'm like, if you guys want to take on the responsibility of the band, they're like, no, just pay me my salary. That's cool. Because the financial responsibility of everything that happens making a record, that $30,000 rests on my shoulders.
That's an important point. Yes. And I just want to I want to talk about that real quick because there's almost a negative connotation of like that kind of division of labor where it's you have someone that's the artist that's kind of controlling and overseeing everything, and there's these guys that are part of the band and they're hired guns and they're the best at what they do and that's why they're there, and you kind of sometimes see like a little bit of like outside perspective of like, oh well, there's that asshole singer or whatever that's running. The amount of pressure, you're the CEO of a company that has essentially it's like shareholders. There's so many depths of layers of what you do in that position, and I am always happily the hired gun because at the end of the session I go home, I pour my whiskey and I forget about whatever, but you are responsible for a lot, and I think that it's important to maybe for people listening to understand that a band is a business, and to be that guy in that position is a lot of pressure.
It is. And I even said in the process of the studio when we had the meltdown, I said to the guys, I was like, I'm a great boss and I pay you guys very well and you get bonused out every tour and Christmases are great. And I'm a great boss and I don't want to be this guy right now. And I hate that I'm yelling at you, but what the fuck, man? Like, I'm not paying you to not come in here prepared, and they're like, well, you don't have your lyrics. I'm like, that's not how it happens because I'm in there singing and you're not reacting to the lyric. Because even if I did have my lyrics, you're not going to react to those lyrics. You're going to react to the emotion.
Can we stop for 1 second?
Of the song.
Because you are the goddamn boss. You're the prince of Candlebox, okay? You can fucking do whatever the goddamn fuck you want because you're the prince of Candlebox. So if you want to come in and just go, like, listen, you Metallica, one of the greatest selling bands of all time. If you listen to any of their demos, it's wa-na-na-na-na-na-na. Wa-na-na. You think fucking Jason Newsted was like, oh, I don't know what wa-na-na-na means? No, he came in and played Sad But True and shut the fuck up because he didn't need to know because he's not Cliff Burton.
Yeah.
There's a great documentary Jason Hook put out called Hired Gun, which is the best kind of peek behind the curtain in terms of that whole situation, and it goes
the Wrecking Crew.
Yeah, it goes into great depth about, the division of labor and the responsibilities of an artist versus, the supporting musicians. And the dynamic it's pretty incredible because, on one hand, being an artist is a pressure and a responsibility and a risk that I never, ever want to handle. And being a in-demand hired gun is a pressure that is very high because you need to be immaculate and you need to make sure that your boss and the artist is supported and they sound the best they possibly can. And it's a really strange dynamic that I think a lot of people outside the industry don't necessarily get a peek of, but it's fascinating. I love seeing it.
You're absolutely right. I mean, listen, that's why Best Supporting Actor is generally always the best category when it comes to film with the Oscars, because your supporting cast, if you were the lead singer of the band, your supporting cast is so much more important than you are, because they allow you to be the artist that you're supposed to be. And that's what I say when I talk about every musician being able to play everybody else's part when they're working together. That's because you're there to support that person. You're not just there to play your part.
Who's the supporting actor in Rush?
Well, that would be Alex Lifeson and Neil Peart, because Geddy basically, was the front man, sang every single song. But not only playing bass, but he's playing the keys.
His bass pedals and his keys that are the lead. Is his lead being supported?
No, it's him.
Because okay, so basically, I got it. All right, now I know the hierarchy. Continue. I'm sorry. I just needed to understand your metaphor. I was trying to put the synapses together.
The right emphasis on the right syllable.
I want to know who's being supported, how, and what this dynamic is, because I don't get it. Because Geddy was singing. His voice is. I mean, listen. There are people that walk around singing, melody on guitar, or they're doing air drums. But generally, 99.9% of the time, somebody that you encounter is going to be singing the lyrics of the song, whatever their favorite song is, or whatever's on the radio. In that case, Geddy would be the lead actor. He's not writing the lyrics, but he is the voice of Neil's lyrics. And then as a band, they're writing the songs together. Geddy was the main songwriter of Rush when it came to musical elements of it. But the lyrics were written by Neil. But Geddy is the actor playing out Neil's lyrics, which makes Alex and Neil the supporting cast of Geddy.
Coming back to your songwriting process, at what point do the lyrics come into play for you? Because I'm interested how that comes to you after. So it's after sort of the music is primarily written. At what point do you start focusing your energy on the lyrics, or how does that happen for you?
Well, per record, it's been different up until Love Stories and Other Musings, which was the record we did after Into the Sun. So Love Stories and Other Musings was recorded in 2011. With the first album, of course, we were writing and practicing every single day. So I was writing lyrics as the band was writing songs. I didn't have All of Far Behind written until we went to the studio to record it. And then the lyrics came to me as the second verse, and the outro of the song came to me that way. Generally for me, it's always, I let the music kind of dictate to me what it wants me to sing. Like I mentioned earlier with Trip. I knew that playful guitar part, because it made me think of my wife, that I had to sing about that. And then the way it felt made me feel like, she kind of tripped me up when I met her. And now we're going on like 20 years together. It's kind of crazy. So that's how it develops. And I'll make it a little note, like a trip, or I'll be like, I've got like 2 or 3 lines from it. And then what also happens is when the recording is going on and I'm doing the stream of consciousness for melody and working through the song, there will be key words that your brain taps into that gives you what the song is going to be about. So like a song like Nothing Left to Lose, when we were tracking that song, this is off of the Wolves record, I sang it like Lemmy Kilmister because I love Motorhead. But I was just going, so I was doing that, right? But I had, when I went back to listen to it, when I knew I had to write lyrics for it, the first thing I heard was "I'm attempted murder," right? So I was like, oh, that's an interesting way to look at a human being, like being a human being. I have nothing left to lose. I'm all these dark sides of everything we're experiencing. And so I wrote the first line, "I'm attempted murder. Can't you see the signs?" Of course. I don't know. It's a fucking, I can't even remember the rest of it now, but so in the process of when it was time for me to do the vocals, very much like Dave Grohl's Sonic Highways, when he did that, where he doesn't write the lyric until the song's done, the song will dictate to you what it wants you to say if you're in tune with it. That's why I've never really had writer's block, because I don't sit around and write for hours. Mm-hmm. I just, when it's ready for me to do it, and I mean, I'm sure there's some bad songs I've done, there's probably songs that I could have sung differently and had different lyrics for, but I don't want to do that. I want to do what I want to do. And I want the music to speak to me the way I want to speak to my audience. And that's what I love about Candlebox.
Yeah, that's amazing. No, I mean, I'm an instrumentalist, so I'm always fascinated by how vocalists and singers in particular, write their lyrics. Because I'm also in a band called Starset, and I hear Dustin, our singer, it does a similar thing where it's like he has an idea and he's got the voice moment. It's like some sort of gibberish words that, there's no lyric at all, and he's doing some sort of melody. And
Siobhán.
Then down the line, it turns into something. I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember how that started.
Blew up. I just realized. So Rush writes about math, right? Their songs are technical, but then they have like subdivisions. And you're like, so is Neil Peart writing for Geddy, or is Geddy responding to Neil? And
Geddy's responding to Neil. The same as Elton with Bernie Taupin.
Which is why I love what you just told me, because now the cycle of all of it, and just so you know, like as a guy that I consider myself a songwriter, I always write to the music. Like I can't even possibly think of writing to the lyric, because it comes to me like when I listen to it, I just know what's going to be good for me to then serve it afterwards. But so do you go like the way you write, I love it, because it's like the universe is feeding it to you. Like, do you just go in and like, oh, that's going to be good to write over? You've just set me up where I can just go in and I can fucking take it from here. Like you feel it in right here, Like
I said, your heart's going to tell you what to do. I mean, like Elton John, you keep thinking about Bernie Taupin wrote all the lyrics and Elton's reacting. So a song like Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me. I mean, or
my favorite Elton John song,
brilliant.
And Love Lies Bleeding.
And Daniel. I mean, all these beautiful songs. And Bernie wasn't gay. Bernie just wrote lyrics, and Elton is gay and said, "This feels like this to me," and he wrote the music to it. That's brilliant shit, man. I mean, that's like, that doesn't happen very often. And not to, compare Candlebox to Elton John or, or Rush or anything, but when you have that, when you allow yourself to be that vulnerable as an artist, I think that's when you write your best material. That's why I'm going to be interested to see what Queens of the Stone Age next record is going to sound like with all the shit that's going on with him and Brody. But, Josh Homme is one of those artists that can do anything. I mean, from Caius to Queens to Vultures and back to Queens, and all these amazing, I mean, I don't know if you guys know, but no one knows that song is 20 fucking years old. That's
crazy. Yeah.
No one knows that.
And it's so contemporary and it's so brilliant. And Josh Homme is one of those musicians, man, that, God, just never lets anybody tell him what to do. There have been some shitty fucking songs, but all in all, as a musician, as a songwriter, as a producer of an art form, Josh is one of my favorite of all times.
That's amazing.
It's incredible to hear you kind of like just all I hear is pressure, just like Cory said, like all the problem. All I can think about is all these problems because you're a guy that came up with these amazing songs and you are the thing that carries it all, right? You know what I mean? Yeah. But it's not like you're the Mike Tramp of White Lion. You are the heart. Yeah. You don't have the veto in the same way. You know what I mean? Like you are, for me, like when I see you, I think Candlebox, and like that's so important to me. And the fact is, you're hiring these guys, but like it's such a double-edged sword because first off, we're in a crazy world where like, can you tour? Can you go places? Are you allowed to do this? And like, there's people relying on you, whether it's people who are your crew and all this sort of stuff. Like the amount of things, like just talking to Siobhán's bass player in Starset, the last thing he does, and certainly the easiest / simplest thing he does, is play bass in the band. Literally, like the amount of logistics he does is fucking insane.
But they're a great band and they're busy. And those parts are challenging. I mean, my guys, Brian and Island, these two guitar players that play with me, I wouldn't want to fill Peter Klett's shoes. My guitar player for our first 3 records is, I put him in the same category as a David Gilmour, as a Jerry Cantrell, as a Nuno Betancourt. Peter Klett is one of the most underrated guitar players in the history of rock and roll music. And so for the fact that Island and Brian are willing to step into those shoes and take that on is it's such an honor for me to play with them, that they feel respect enough to try and produce. I mean, they both have JC 120s, these Roland JC 120 amps, because that was Peter's sound for the first 3 Candlebox records. So they have them and they own them. They bought them to sound like him. That's a fucking respectful thing, man, and I love these guys for that. I would not want to do that.
Kempers, you can just download that profile right there.
Well, no, but we talked about Kempers.
Kidding.
And but it's because of what I'm doing right now as a band and being the business. It would be way cheaper for me to buy both of them Kempers, to not have any fucking amps on stage and no cabs. But I'm old school, man. Like we run monitors. It's loud as shit. When you go see Candlebox, our stage is loud. When we do these festivals, you can't hear any vocals, you can't hear any guitars. You hear the drums, you might hear a little bit of something because none of these bands have gear on stage. Mm-hmm. We're on that show, you fucking hear us on stage. We're loud as shit because that's what I want to be in a rock and roll band, and it would be cheaper for me to buy these guys Kempers, but I want to step back there in front of Brian's Marshall rig and put my head in that speaker. And there's pictures of me doing it. Because
Ben, why do you derail the greatest things ever?
I'm going to blow your mind. Hold on. You could buy the Kemper, you buy a radial box, and then you get a whole wall of Marshalls left over from Kerry King or Yngwie Malmsteen, and then you can just put it through all of them at once.
It's not the same.
All at once. It could be for real.
It's not the same. It's not a tube. And I can hear that difference. Sonically, I can hear it.
That's completely admirable, and I think tone's a real thing. So,
but I mean, I'm an idiot because I should just go.
No, you're not.
Who cares what I'm hearing? Because the audience isn't hearing what I'm hearing. But I'm the one that's feeling the air move from those fucking cabs, from a Class A or a Class B, 50 watt Marshall amp.
Yeah, and that's what your fans have come to expect, and that's what they deserve. That's like I said. That's. There's not many things that make a band stand out nowadays. And the first thing, jumping around, I have my Spotify up on my studio, one of my studio monitors all the time, because I like to listen and reference and everything and listen to my monitors. And just popping on Candlebox immediately, it was like, oh, this is different than the things I've been listening to. It has that like real sound. The drums they're pushing and pulling with the vocals and with the guitar and everything. It's just, there's like a movement that is it's very different than most of what you hear as far as releases are coming out right now. And trust me, I love I love super produced music. As a producer, I'm super anal about going in and making sure that every part is super locked in, and there's a place for that. But it's super refreshing, and it's great to hear that natural, organic band in a room sound. So that's what makes it special, is that, you don't have to be the same band with the Kemper on stage. You can be the guys with the loud, amps and piss off the sound guy because of the bleed. It's good, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, listen, it's rock and roll. I have a saying, it's called rock and roll, look it up, because the problem, what's happened is I kind of always go back to, being a 12-year-old kid at a Dead Kennedy show, is the danger of rock and roll is gone. And it's like, it's supposed to piss people off. It's supposed to fuck with the system. It's supposed to make you think. It's supposed to challenge your opinions. It's supposed to have a political stance. It's supposed to make you feel like, maybe I'm wrong. And maybe I should, or this is exactly what I'm feeling, and this person understands it. And there's so much candy out there. I've said it a million times. Like there's like 75,000 vanilla ice creams. Where's the Neapolitan? You know what I mean? I love a Neapolitan. I want a little strawberry and chocolate. I don't just want vanilla. Yeah, okay, you got vanilla seed. Where's the seed from? Oh, it's from Panama. Big fucking deal. It's still vanilla ice cream. And that's the problem, and we've played with a lot of these bands over the past few years, and I'm friends, and I'm friends with a lot of these young guys. I'm friends with a lot of guys that are playing in these hugely successful bands that Candlebox is opening for, and they're not doing anything that the other bands aren't doing. I mean, Seether, I love them because Sean is a drunk mess, and he'll try and get sober, and then he'll write a record that is so visceral, and he's so fucked up, and I love him so much. I mean, we played a show with them. I got to tell this story. So we just played with them this past summer, and we're all trying to stay away from COVID. And I toured with Seether through Europe in 2005 with my band, the High Watts, and they were generous enough to take us over to Europe with them and let us use their gear and stuff. And I love them, and I will love them forever for that. So we played the show with them in New Jersey, and Sean's like, so good to see you. How have you been? Call me. Let's do something. And then we're playing with them 2 weeks later. 2 weeks later, I walk in and say, hey, man, I called you. He's like, oh, hey, what's up? I'm like, 2 weeks ago, you told me to call you. You don't remember having a conversation with me. Of course he doesn't, because he's Sean and Seether, and he's out of his fucking mind. And I love that about him. He's the only one like that that's doing anything different in that genre of, and I'm speaking of, that's everybody that's on rock radio right now. I mean, it's Shinedown, Lizzie Hale, or Hailstorm, Evanescence, whatever. I mean, if you modern rock radio, yeah. Well, Starset, I don't know.
Well, you just listed off bands that were on rock radio 10 years ago. Have you been listening to anything? Evanescence?
Maybe not. Well, no, but we've Shinedown, Lizzie Hale. Yeah, I mean, those are a lot of. Yeah,
they're still
on rock radio.
Yeah, they are.
With new stuff? Yeah.
What are you listening to? I mean,
I don't listen to the radio. I worked in radio 10 years ago, and that's what I heard.
See, you're good. You're good.
I feel like I was hearing Henry Rollins through you, because one of the only thing better than Black Flag for me is Henry Rollins' oration, right? Like like everything he's said, you know what I mean? Like the blueprints for the destruction of the world is actually a track on one of his fucking ramblings. Yeah, and he's right. Been saying this, he's been right since day one, and listening to you kind of get a little bit nihilistic. Like I'm like, there's the Henry Rollins influence. Because I'm like, everything you're saying, I'm like, he's right. Road's burning. Laugh about it. It's like that movie Don't Look Up. Like, oh yeah, we're all just going to fucking die. It's
no,
obvious.
But it's true. I totally relate. Yeah, I love what you're saying though. Is that you need a lot of things do feel very vanilla, and like just today I was a stupid story, but I was up in the gym and some asshole brought in like a big loudspeaker to play this like god awful music. And I was like, I was talking to the girl next to me. I was like, this is so terrible. I was like, what happened to good hip hop? Like, there's no melody anymore, and there's no rhythm. Everything is like da 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 da, and the same thing. And like this guy like heard me and like took his speaker away. But I mean, really, like a lot of the times, I feel that that's the case. It's like you're so hard pressed to find somebody that's like the renegade, like doing something.
Siobhán bullying people at the gym. What's wrong with you?
Well, I mean, I think the thing is the responsibility rests on the listener's shoulders, right? But unfortunately, we've become and he's mentioned nihilistic. That's fucking crazy. But we've become a society that relies only on instantaneous gratification, right? So there's no real depth. Like we talked earlier about opening the vinyl or the cassette and pulling the lyrics out. That process we all grew up on, right? I'm 52 years old. I don't know how old you guys are, but I'm assuming you're in your 30s or 40s. That process of only having something physical in your hands doesn't exist anymore. Our physical life is this thing that I'm touching and looking at, and messages are coming in and I'm swiping them as we're having a conversation. The approach towards appreciation of the art or the creative craft of art is gone by the wayside because we don't want to dig anymore. That's why music is becoming so vanilla, because everybody's just hoping for a hit single, which will give them a little bit of love. This Aaron Jones kid that's from Seattle, I know you guys have heard of him. I played with him 7 times this year. He is the foundation. He's living, breathing Seattle. He's from Seattle. He's a young musician that has so much fucking soul and so much passion. And he's opened every one of these fucking festivals I played. And he's better, and his band's better than the headliners. We played with him in St. Louis, and Offspring was a headliner, and Aaron Jones played at 4:00 and destroyed that stage. Fucking destroyed it. And I love Dexter, and I mean, I've known the Offspring since 1993. I mean, we toured with them. We played shows with them. I know those guys, great friends. It's paint by numbers now for that. I mean, even though their last record actually was really, really good, and I was super excited to listen to it, and I loved what they had created. But that's not what they're playing live. I mean, they're playing what everybody loves, and they're the headliner, and they get $125,000, $150,000 to play. Aaron Jones plays for 4,000 people at that 20,000 capacity venue for $500, and he owned that fucking stage, and he owned it every night, and he blew us away. And I've been doing this shit for fucking 30 years, and I still believe that my performance should be like Aaron's, and so that's how I approach it. He's better. But we've lost this we've lost the love of the danger of rock and roll. And it's supposed to be dangerous, and it's supposed to destroy shit. And, Billy Joe's meltdown at iHeart Festival years ago, which everybody fucking talked about when he was saying, I got 1 minute left, go fuck yourself. He was right. He got sober because of it, which I wouldn't have done. I've had my meltdowns on stage, and fuck that. I don't have to apologize for anything. Five Finger Death Punch, I'm saying this on your podcast, when they apologized about that lead singer melting down in Memphis, the street festival, I tweeted, it's like, Guns N' Roses never fucking apologized. Don't you? Your name is Five Finger Death Punch. What are you apologizing for? Don't do it. So your audience is pissed off in Memphis. They'll forget about it. You guys had a shitty show. Don't fucking apologize. You're Five Finger Death Punch. Hey, we're sorry. Our singer had a bad night. Go fuck yourselves. Don't apologize. Your audience will understand. And if they love you, who the fuck cares? You got paid $200,000 to play that fucking show.
What's that band?
Yeah.
Like, she fucking hates me
at that point.
Yeah.
If you wanted to
who's that fucking dude? Wes Scatlin or whatever his name is. Like, what's the band?
Puddle of Mud.
Do you apologize for that guy? Because I feel like I've seen some stuff and like they're just letting that. It's like, because there's a few bands, okay, that dude, and then Days of the New, okay, that guy has some serious fucking problems. Like I've seen them live, and the dude's literally the craziest mental case. Like Axl Rose times 1,000, and like I don't understand how that's even happened. Like, do you apologize for those guys? Do you apologize at that level? No. All
you
right,
never
that's great.
apologize.
I love that.
No.
Never surrender.
No.
Corey Hart.
Listen, man. Exactly. Corey Hart. I love Corey Hart. Rock and roll music is, this guy right here is a perfect example of what it's supposed to be. I don't need to apologize to you. If I have a bad show and you don't fucking like it, I'm sorry. I'm human. Guess what? That's what fucking happens.
This is the rock and roller that it's supposed to be for me.
Yeah, Charlie. I mean,
It's he's the one for me. Just saying.
That's the fucking those stories of him. When Mick Jagger's knocking on his hotel room, where's my drummer? Punches him in the face. I'm not your fucking drummer. You're my singer. And that's real shit. That's rock and roll music, and that doesn't exist anymore. And it's not to say that these bands aren't making great music. Shinedown's last record was fucking awesome. Lizzie Hailstorm. I mean, great band. Breaking Benjamin. But when do you stop trying to, I guess, appease your audience? And what I loved was I did an interview with Brent from Shinedown, I want to say 5 years ago. That record, I forget what it was called. They did it. They wrote everything themselves. It was the first time that they'd written an entire record by themselves. And it's not that they're not capable of it, because they're a great band, and I do love them, and I think that they've written some amazing songs. But it's the first time that they actually ventured into the world to write by themselves. Yes.
Yeah.
And I did a Westwood.
Siobhán's like, I was on that tour.
Yeah, we toured with them on that album. Yeah.
And I sat with Brent and I said, so how does it feel to be solely responsible for this album? And he was like, what do you mean? And I said, well, it's all on your shoulders. If it doesn't sell, you wrote the songs. Like, you guys wrote everything. I mean, there may have been one song on that record where they wrote with somebody else, which their whole career has been songwriting with other songwriters, which is fine, in that world. But he was like, I never really thought of it that way. And I'm like, well, I just want to know. I mean, I'm here to interview you, and what's it feel like to take that responsibility on? Because it's a challenge. When you have to be solely responsible for the success or failure of your fucking record to your audience, that's a challenge, and it's hardcore. And it can be heartbreaking when that record doesn't sell.
Yeah.
And I don't think that record sold for them.
Fed him to the wolves.
When you have a band, even like Shinedown, who's had longevity, and especially Candlebox, you guys have been around forever. When you have a new record, like, how do you break down, I guess, the results of a release? Because you guys, bands, especially just to put this out there, bands especially like you have this, I'm sure, a core audience that is
1,000 people.
Hey, those 1,000 people, they're fucking awesome.
They'll buy
right?
everything you do. Yeah.
So you have that, but there's like layers, right? You have like those people, then you have the outer layer that's been with it for the hits, and then you have the people that might catch the radio songs. So like, how do you look at that element of the business of being Candlebox when you put out a record?
I still don't care. I mean, I it's caution to the wind for me. I mean, it always has been. I'm with Pavement Entertainment, which is, they have that Plush, the girl band Plush. They're on our label, which is, I mean, whatever, Pavement Entertainment is what it's called. I think they have Puddle Mud as well. That's a hard question to answer. I throw caution to the wind just because I don't give a shit. I make a living. I didn't get into music to be a rock star. Of course, if it came with the title, then great. That was awesome. I've only ever known music. That's all I've known, from the youngest of Kevin Martin to the oldest of Kevin Martin. It's all I have. I mean, I don't, I've never followed a trend. I've never tried to write a single. I've never concerned myself with, being friends with any other successful band, aligning myself with people that, can influence a crowd or take Candlebox. I don't give a shit, man. I make what I want to make. And I love bands that do that, I mean, if you look at my playlist on my phone, it's it's all over the fucking place. There's a band from Australia I love called Gang of Youths. They missed on the last record. They're back with this new record. It's brilliant. Band of Horses is one of my favorite bands. They have their first #1 fucking record in 20 years of being a band right now. Manchester Orchestra is a band I love. Starset, we've played with Starset. Unbelievable band. I mean, that's the thing. That's so creative, what's going on there with that whole screen and all the shit that he's doing. But the band is really fucking good. And they support that. And
they're all right.
That to me is interesting.
They use a lot of Kempers.
Yeah, they do. But there's a reason for that. And in that environment,
because Dustin doesn't want the guitar player to know that he has any power over whatsoever.
There's a vision. We want to replicate the album as close as possible.
No, it's just a joke. You know, we always joke with Siobhán about
Starset. We love to give her a hard. She's married to the guitars.
And you should give her shit about it, being married to a guitar player. But no, I mean, it's like bands that do tracks and stuff. There's a reason why you do it. You're trying to recreate the sound. That's fine. But if you're Vanilla Ice Cream, it's not. If you're Neapolitan, it's amazing. If you're Mint Chocolate Chip, fuck yeah. If you're Peanut Butter Cup, make it fucking magical. Toffee, Crunch, fucking coffee, whatever. I mean,
it all comes back to ice cream is what you're saying.
Stop trying to fucking be Vanilla Ice Cream.
I put the Ben in Ben and Jerry's, my friend.
Yeah.
I am a Cherry Garcia kind of guy, but
I think that stop trying to be Vanilla Ice Cream is the real crux of this conversation. That is the end of our second.
Van Winkle's going to be so angry.
Our second hour.
We're under pressure. Remember that? Holy shit! It's a giant David Bowie Queen joke.
Bum 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 bum.
Right.
Yes. I feel like we've referenced that on this podcast before.
That was vanilla.
Yeah, we definitely have.
See that's the vanilla bean. That's not vanilla. So he had the bean in there.
And it's the most expensive spice in the world. If anyone didn't know that, not saffron. Misconception.
Oh, yeah, it's true. Saffron's second.
And here we are.
Go get
the end of yet another
check
hour.
out
Candlebox.
Please, just listen to it. I don't give a fuck if you buy it. Just stream it.
As someone that didn't listen to Candlebox ever before, I absolutely love it, and I agree with everything that everyone said. I mean, it's a really powerful record. I encourage everybody to go buy it, listen to it, support the band.
Crank that shit.
Thank you. And if you can figure out what I was drinking when I sang Los Angeline, I'll send you a bottle.
All right.
I'll take that as a challenge happily.
Yeah.
I just real quick before we go, and this is just because I was doing a little research and I saw in a previous interview you were going to start a podcast at some point. Are you doing that?
I am, yeah, but I've been asked by Sirius XM to do it on their service. So
nice, amazing.
Not doing the podcast yet.
What's it called?
It's called Rock and Roll. Look it up.
All right, love that.
So, that's what it's called. It is like this. Hey, everybody, welcome to It's Called Rock and Roll. Look it up. I'm Kevin Martin, your host, Candlebox, and this is what we're doing tonight.
Is that out now, or is that?
No, I'm actually. We're just building it now with Sirius XM. I pitched it to a podcast service, and somebody from Sirius got a hold of it and was like, "Hey, we want that on Sirius." And I'm like, "Cool."
Hell yeah, man.
Wait a minute.
That's great.
So in the line of Alice Cooper and Sammy Hagar and Ronnie Van Zant, like we're going to get Kevin Martin, bro? Because like I love listening to Alice Cooper like very calmly be like, oh yeah, and it was in 1980 when Electric Light Orchestra. Like he's just so calm. He's like, I'm going to go play golf tomorrow. By the way, I used to cut off my head. Like, is that what we get? Are we getting that? Or are we getting like full on rock and roll Kevin?
Cut off my head. No, you'll have
he still cuts off his head.
No, you'll have the rock and roll Kevin, because what it is that the saying is it's called rock and roll. Look it up. We're here to celebrate the good, the bad, and the absolutely ugly of rock and roll music. And what it is it's basically conversations with musicians and artists and people that they're going to give me their 5 favorites, 2 songs that they think are ugly, and one song they think is absolutely the worst song they've ever heard and can't understand why it was successful. But we want to dig into what music's about and that process. And so some of my guests are super interesting, all musicians that from Blind Melon all the way to Alice in Chains. So it's gonna be pretty fun.
Please tell me you're gonna have Shannon on there.
Shannon,
He's not talking about not Shannon Hoon.
Shannon Hoon,
because Shannon Hoon was the lead singer of
Shannon Larkin, yes.
Do we
Shannon
have a Ouija
Larkin.
board for Shannon Hoon? There's rain today, bro.
Our mutual friend Shannon Larkin.
The reason we have you on this podcast, yes, Shannon Larkin, our dear friend.
By the way, for everybody who doesn't know, Shannon Larkin, when he played with Candlebox, and I don't know if he told you guys the story, and I know that you said we've run out of time, but I hope you're still recording.
Time in the world. We don't keep going. We're rock and roll, man.
So Shannon comes in to play with us. My manager at the time was John Reese, who was managing Guns N' Roses with Doug, Machine Head. He had so many bands at the time that he was working with. I think he was managing Ugly Kid Joe as well. I needed a drummer. Dave Cruzen had quit and was, leaving Candlebox after all the shit that went on with the Happy Pills record. And John's like, I got this drummer for you. You're going to love him. And I was like, I love Snot. I didn't know Shannon had hearing loss. So he shows up the first day. He'd been practicing. We worked through, a few of the songs. It's going great. We get to start working on You. And it just doesn't feel right. And we run through it, and I walk back. I was like, hey, man, so listen, it's a 6/8, but it's a shuffle feel. It's got this push on the kick that happens with the back side of the snare, and you got to kind of go through the whole thing. He's not looking at me. I'm like standing next to him. I was like, hey, Shannon, so can we talk about it? Like, it's a push, and it's like this. And he turns, he goes, oh, hey, God, didn't see you there. It's like, listen, I've lost 30% of my hearing in this year and 40 in this year. I was like, this is going to be interesting because Candlebox is all dynamic. And Shannon came from that world of just bah, bah, bah. Like there's no, Godsmack, even for that matter, there's really the dynamic is not much.
He's aggressive.
He's aggressive. And he was like, what the fuck? And I said, so he asked me, he goes, can you show me how to play it? And I was like, yeah. I sat down and he was just like, oh, it's all ghosts. And I was like, yeah, it's all ghost note. You just got to drag that fucking snare, just drag it, and you're going to reach over and go bell here, and then you're going to reach over here. And he was like, oh my God, we're going to have so much fun. And that tour that we did was an absolute blast because he focused so hard on what I needed from him. And I think it was the first time in his career as a drummer and first time as a singer working with a drummer like that, where our connection was so tight, and I love that kid so fucking much, man. Like he got up and played with us 2 years ago. I don't know, were we in somewhere in Florida? I can't remember the fucking town. And he got up and played with me, and he hadn't played 10,000 Horses in at that point it would have been 20 years, 2018, so 18 years, and he fucking played it exactly right. He sat at home, relearned it, played it perfectly, and he played it in front of 2,000 people, and they were all like, "Oh my God!" I was like, "Ladies and gentlemen, Shannon Larkin from Godsmack." And they're like, they went fucking nuts. But it was Fort Myers, Florida.
Yeah,
that's where
he lives right around there. Yeah, yep.
And he killed it. But our connection on that tour when he played with me was not only something for me to learn from, but for him to learn from it. And I think that we just became the best of fucking friends on that. And I love that kid from the bottom of my fucking heart.
I can believe that.
He's an amazing human,
He flew me down to Florida. I went down and jammed with him in the Apocalypse Blues Revival, and let me just tell you, so he can't hear shit without his things in. Hang out with Shannon's amazing, but one of the things that's amazing is that he's so passionate. He'll be like, man, it's like ba-doom, boom, da, ba-doom, boom. And he does it to a point where if you're not a musician, you're like, oh, this guy is fucking crazy.
Yeah, and he is crazy.
He's pretty crazy.
But then he'd be like, no, hold on, shh, dude, you gotta do the ba-doom, boom. Da, da, da. And he'll look at you like you're supposed to know what he's talking about. And then he'll look back and you're like, dude, you just nailed it. And you're like, what? I nailed it? He's like, yeah.
Great supporting actor.
There we go.
Because he's one of those guys that he doesn't have to hear you. He's literally he's astrally projecting himself into your mind.
He's rock and roll incarnate.
Yeah. Yeah. And when I was mentioning earlier about musicians that play every other every other person's part. That's what Shannon, I think, learned from me. I was like, listen, you're not just here to play drums. You have to support this entire band. And you don't know any of these fucking cocksuckers, but you have to know this and you have to learn it. And what can I do? And he's like, just keep turning around and looking at me and talking me through it. And I'll learn everybody else. And that tour we did, which, I mean, it was just Pete and I with 3 new musicians. I mean, it was fantastic. We did 2 nights at the Fillmore in San Francisco, sold out. So, I mean, it was worth it, but I love Shannon and just such a deserved human being musically. I mean, and career wise, he's got a soul unlike, most of us in this music business have, and I fucking love him so much.
I believe he's an executive producer on the show, actually. I think that's...
Yeah, he got that title at some point.
Credits at the end of this. I think he's actually...
I think it's even broader than that, Kevin. I think not just the music business. I think that he's like a great example of a human being on this planet. Because just
he's
to paint
a very
picture,
empathetic person.
Yeah, because if you go to his house, because I've been lucky enough where he's like let me into his world. He like takes care of and I mean like takes care of like very empathetically and understanding like a bunch of turtles and other reptiles, and he has bonsai trees, but like other like indigenous, like crazy, like stuffed flora that he's like, dude, this is from Africa. I raised this from here, and like it's all like requires certain temperatures and pHs. He's like, I got a stream guy that's coming over today who's gonna tend to the baby turtles, and he's just got his own little studio that's separate, like, and all he does. Like, and just so you guys know, like he watches horror movies. Like I'm a fucking asshole. So like I went through because I found a severed head in the room I was staying at. So I started looking through some of the stuff, and he has all these magazines. Well, not magazines, but notebooks, and they're all written in like psychopathically small, perfect handwriting. And you find out that they're all reviews of horror films, and that he can't. And he explained to me the next day. He's like, "Oh well, Benny, I can't remember all the horror films, but if I remember like the best kill, or if I remember like what's the plot turn or whatever," and he has his own like little glyphs, and he has literally an entire fucking shelf.
We're gonna have him back on the show just to talk horror movies or something.
Next to a legit severed head, like I'm serious, like bones of a dead person, and he's got all these fucking things, and it's all just horror reviews to his 10,000 DVDs. He never went to Laserdisc. He never went to VHS. Stopped at DVDs, and he's got them all, and he wrote them all out because he's a psychopath.
He's a Jesse Pinkman of rock and roll.
Yeah!
Oh, man. So good. All right, well, listen, Kevin, thank you so much for hanging with us tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure, burning through a couple hours with you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Obviously, check out Wolves. The record's amazing. Check out, the entire catalog. Like I said, I had the pleasure of just kind of going through today and skimming through the years, and the songs are just solid. It's a great... They're just you can absolutely just immerse yourself in them. So make sure everyone goes checks out. And we'll also stay tuned for your podcast. Whenever it's ready to go, shoot us a message. We'll be sure to promote it. And whenever you want to come back and hang out anytime, we'd love to have you.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. Thank you so much for being with us.
Am I supposed to do my rant? Am I
You
supposed to
already did.
bring
You
it
did
all
like
back?
Inception levels of rants tonight.
Do it, man. Do it.
Well, because I was going to tell you that in 1998, you played a giant festival. You played a giant festival called Loco Bazooka for WAAF in Boston.
Yes.
And I worked with a guy named Dan Hartwell who's been on this show. And I remember thinking to myself that you were I think it was 98, you were like the band that I was like, oh my God, I'm actually excited to see Candlebox because I hadn't seen you yet. I was still like checking off like, okay, Metallica, and I needed to see Candlebox. And I remember I had seen you. I walked backstage. You weren't wearing shoes. I said this to Shane, who's in the Apocalypse Blues. And he's like, oh yeah, no, that's accurate. And I remember, I think we went onto your bus. I was with my buddy Joe Zeppi, who worked at the radio station. And I said something like, I can't get high. And because I couldn't at the time, I didn't think I could get high, and I got super, super, super fucking high on your bus. And I said I wasn't high because I didn't feel high. But you guys kept looking at me and saying, "No, you're high." I'm like, I don't think I'm high. You're like, kid, you're high. And that was literally my first rock and roll, look it up, fucking experience in my entire life, dude. So thank you for that.
Welcome. My pleasure. I'm so happy we got you high for the first time.
You did. You really did.
He started him down the path that has led him to this. So that's where we're at right now.
Yeah.
We're all back here
Well,
together.
have me back anytime. Have me back anytime, would you please? Because this is about
We
love.
love you, dude.
No, it would be our
Absolutely.
pleasure.
Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much for being here.
And well, the first thing I heard was and I just never heard that sound before. My ears had never heard anything like that before. I couldn't believe it was a guitar doing that, and it changed my entire way of looking at guitar. Because before that, I was just like hyperactive kind of player. You know, I was Angus Young on excessive amounts of crack, and